Characters. Who are they? What are they? Who will they become? So much goes into the creation of a character, their backstory, culture, beliefs, image, eye color, description, personalities, and so much more. As readers, we only get a glimpse of what truly goes into each character. So grab a beverage and get comfortable as we explore this episode's character in depth with your host, Madilynn Dale. Hey everyone, welcome back for another season of Character Driven. I am so excited for you guys to be here tonight. We have our first guest of the season, and we're going to be talking about a fantastic character. Before we get started, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't. And let's meet the author of the day.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Thomas Davis, author of the Versatile Layer series. It's a science fiction series that takes place in a distant future where Earth is a distant memory. And the main character is Captain Jacob Takeda.
It is a pleasure to have you here tonight. I'm so excited to hear about this character. So to start off with, tell me about the idea of your character. Where did this one come from?
Jake, I wanted to make a character who was a complete mess, like a character with a lot of flaws, a lot of obstacles, like mentally and physically, to process and overcome, and put a lot of my own crap into him, and just saw how and just wanted the character to grow and become like a better and more efficient person.
Sweet. So what is one of the worst things you put this character through? I'm kind of curious because you say you put him through a whole lot of crap. Let's dive into that.
Okay. In the very first book, he has to sever his own arm to escape a catastrophe that's happening on a space colony that he lives on. It's the future, so he gets it replaced with like a cybernetic left hand. That's a lot cooler and a lot stronger. But it's a painful moment for him. And even getting the new hand grafted on is painful because they have to go to each nerve. So it's a process that takes hours and it's really painful to do. So you can feel the hand like it's your own.
Mm-hmm. Man, that would suck. Nerve pain.
Yeah. Oh, and his parents die in that same.
Oh my gosh! Whoa. So, does this happen to him at a young age? Like, what spurs all this to start happening in his life?
Okay, so it happens in book 1, which is The Red Girl, and in that book, Jake, his father, he owns like a interstellar salvage company.
Mm-hmm.
So his father, Travis Takeda, he finds like an alien artifact on this nearby planet because at this point, humans all live on space stations that are round, kind of like an inverted sphere where the city and the scenery is all on the outer shell, and the sky and the sun is at the center of the space colony. So they live. The space colony is called Lhasa, and they live next to this large planet called Jaffiel. So his father's on Jaffiel, finds the alien pod, brings it back. Jake, while he's trying to escape some school bullies for the day, he ends up going to his father's shop and opening up the pod to find an alien girl inside. And it turns out the alien is from a race called the Arez from a nearby world that the humans have been at war with for hundreds of years. So he gets into adventures with her on the space colony. I see your cat attacking you.
Yeah. Sorry.
And at some point her people come back for her, and Due to events that happened on the colony, they get her back injured. So her older sister, who's the captain of the ship that picked her up, this large battleship, she opens fire on the colony and kills most of the population on the colony. And Jake manages to escape with the few survivors.
Man, that is intense. So how does that shape him going forward? Does he want revenge for that attack, or does he want to get her back or anything?
So the events of the story, they basically going forward. The girl's name was Adiola Infalm, and it turns out that she's part of the Arez royal family. So he after their time together, because going into that story, he's kind of nebbish. He's like very nervous about getting hurt. He's very nervous about death. He's racked with like insecurities and fears. And through his interactions with her, he realizes that he's stronger than he thinks he is. Like he gains some confidence and some courage from that experience. But at the end of the book, he's still afraid that he's going to revert to who he used to be. So he decides to join the military so he can, one, search for Adiola out in the stars during the battles. And also, so it's kind of like he's trapping himself into pushing himself forward, because he fears that if he goes back to a peaceful life where he's not constantly challenged, he's not going to become the person that he wants to be. He's going to revert back into who he used to be.
That is awesome. So the dynamic between him and the Red Girl, does a romantic relationship spark up between them, or is it strictly like friendship kind of?
It starts as her trying to kill him as soon as she gets out of the pod. Then it turns to them bonding over shared not, I wouldn't say directly shared experiences, but similar experiences. Like part of the story is his mother, Jake's mother, Annabelle Takeda, she died during his birth. So she's in a robotic, so she cares for him. She's still around. She cares for him in a robotic body called a frame.
Oh, wow.
So her memories are downloaded into the frame, and she's still his mom. And Adiola, she recently lost her mother in a tragic way. So they connect over that, and romantic feelings end up developing between the two of them.
Oh, yay. I love it. I like romance. Romance authors.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like a Romeo and Juliet type story where you got these two people on opposite sides of the galaxy, and there's a war going on between their two groups that they have to step up and do something about it.
Nice. Hopefully they do not die in the end, though. Like, yeah, that's always the tragic that, right?
So Adiola, she taught Jake how to be brave, and he taught her how to be kind. Oh. And they connected over that.
I love it.
Yeah.
So what was your favorite scene to write featuring this character?
Oh, man, there's so many. I'm trying to think what comes to my head. Let's see.
This is normally a harder question. So.
Yeah.
So it's like trying to figure
to keep it simple, and since it's popping into my head right now, the introduction to book 2, which is the I can't do it's backwards on the screen, which is the glass runner, where it's because the story takes place over the course of about 12 years. Ooh. So the first book is the destruction of Lhasa. Then we jump 10 years to a battlefield, and there's a young soldier describing the battle. His name's Chase Turner, and he describes this group called the Elite Strike Team. Like, you got a robot that drops down in a metal box at the center of the battlefield. A tall blonde woman with short hair. She strides to the front, and she's wearing like a metallic corset around her waist with like a minigun attached to it that she fires. Another member of the team standing on top of a large cannon, a sniper rifle, and a red cloche hat on, who's Edith Fafner, who's a sniper. And then Jake walks out with his he's wearing like his Oh yeah, a versatile layer is an exosuit, which is
Uh-huh.
our special name of where you're seeing an exosuit. So he walks out in his exosuit. He walks through the ranks of the soldiers. He has his blue trench coat
Yeah.
on his shoulders, blowing in the wind behind him with his captain's hat on. And he takes off the coat, he takes off his hat, puts on a helmet with like a blue handprint on it, and he unsheaths his sword, which is called a pulse blade, and
Yeah.
it's a kind of like a samurai sword with a trigger on the with a button on the hilt. Presses it, and it subtly glows, and he just he walks out to the battlefield with his coat blowing away behind him, and he
That is
faces
so
down the
cool.
enemy soldiers. Yeah.
Sweet. So he basically goes from like being a scared young kid to a super badass, right?
A super badass. People perceive him as being a super badass, but
Yeah.
he's still very thoughtful. He still questions himself a lot. He still has a lot of the same insecurities, but he manages to stay in charge of his insecurities, except for one point in the story where it really goes down and the main villain is introduced, and he kind of has a freak out around there. But
Nice.
but yeah, I like to write characters to have like I would say weaknesses or just human characters. Like
Yeah.
all my characters have frailties, and I like to write like a lot of interesting banter between the characters and a lot of
I love
a lot
it.
of personality. Like the members of the strike team, they all gave each other nicknames. Like Sam Hawkins, she's the tall one with the minigun. They nicknamed her Princess because she hates being called that. Edith Fafner, the woman with the red crochet hat, eye patch, and the sniper. They named her Short Stack because she's short and she ate a stack of pancakes in front of him one time. David Assad, he's the robot. His mind was dead. He's Jake's friend from Lhasa. And
Yeah.
along the way, somehow along the way he died, and they downloaded his memory into a frame called a loadout frame, which is a large robotic body designed for battle. And his nickname, they call him Tin Can.
It's fitting, at least, right?
And they have a pilot named Agatha Park. They call her Dizzy because she's always spacing out when she's not in the cockpit of a fighter.
She uses all her focus to fly. So.
Yeah, and another one of her quirks is in book 6 we really get into her character, and she's a huge music lover. So she's kind of spaced out because she's always thinking about music. And as a part of book 6, in the chapter, I'd like write the titles of the songs that she's thinking about as you're reading through the book. And it's always like appropriate to the situation. Like she has a playlist constantly going in her head. That's
awesome. So it sounds kind of like they've like created their own family then. They're the friends.
Yeah, that's his family.
Awesome.
And Jake is he's still uncomfortable expressing how he feels about people to him. So he's the kind of person he'll go behind your back to do something really nice for you and not want to take credit for it.
Yeah. Was that something that developed for him as a kid with his family?
Actually, he had a bit of a rough family life. Like his mother died in childbirth, and his father resurrected her into this robot body. Mm-hmm. And they were having problems before the resurrection. Yeah. And it kind of like as the years went on, it's kind of like, yeah, they were just together for him. And he's seen how he's such a smart kid. He completely picked up on the tension that was always in the room. And yeah, that's hung over his head his entire life.
That sucks, man. Oh.
Yeah. It's always interesting to add layers to a character.
Yeah, it makes them more realistic too. Like and the fact that you're tying that in, because it's kind of like part of his serious backstory. Besides the family issues, were there any other significant things that happen to kind of like shape who he becomes besides like their death and everything? Like, what other events happen?
There's a few things in the military academy that I'm fleshing out right now. Other than that, yeah, he's had the childhood, and then just the different things he has to deal with as an adult and the leader of a specialized unit.
Nice. So with him being a leader like that, does he kind of have to compartmentalize everything to stay focused at times?
There's a dynamic on the team where Jake he can be a bit scatterbrained. He comes up with like wild plans and ways to handle things. And then Sam Hawkins, as his second in command, a lot of times she's in charge of delegating those plans to the rest of the team. Like she speaks his language in a way. Like he can just ramble on and come up with an ingenious way to tackle something, but at the same time, it's hard for other people to follow.
Oh yeah, that's awesome that they can work together like that and just like flesh it out. So does the team ever do they ever meet the Red Girl?
Sir, yeah. Some members of the team actually meet her. I'm not going to go too much into detail because it's a major spoiler.
Spoiler, yeah. But does he ever tell them what happened? Do they know? Does he share that past event with them eventually, or does he kind of?
They all know where he came from, and they have some details about what happened at Lhasa. Like they know everyone knows, like if you came from Lhasa, you have a horror story of that day where the Arez opened fire on a civilian colony and caused all that destruction. And that's like the catalyst for the new war they're fighting, because there was a ceasefire in place when that happened. Not like an official ceasefire, but but a like an implied retire to fighting ceasefire type of thing.
Yeah. So kind of like peaceful negotiations were happening, and then Mad Sister comes.
Not even negotiations. What happened was there's this thing called the Battle of Jaffiel that happened like 80 years before the story, where the human and the Arez fleets were just amassing around Jaffiel for like months, and then randomly an Arez prince was visiting the flagship, and he was kind of a maniac. And he just opened fire and caused all these ships to fire upon each other. And there were like over 100,000 deaths.
Ooh.
And after that, like both fleets retired to both races split off, and they stopped fighting because the Arez, unbeknownst to the humans, the Arez couldn't keep fighting because they lost so many people in that battle that if the humans decided to invade right then, they would have overtook them, because there was no way the Arez could keep fighting. But they didn't know that, so both sides just retreated back to their corners.
Man, that is intense. And then she goes and just starts it all over again when she attacks. Ooh.
Yeah. And it turns out that Adeola's great grandfather was the captain of that ship that the prince fired from. And and the emperor at the time wanted to keep fighting, and he had to actually, because her family did, the royal family now, but 80 years ago they weren't. He actually had to launch a whole revolution to take the emperor out of power and replace him, to keep him from going straight back into the war when they weren't ready for it.
Wow. So they've kind of their people have a very chaotic, war strewn history then.
Yeah.
Does that affect how they find peace, hopefully later on in the story?
Yeah, it does. And another cool thing about the Arez is they lost so many males in that, because they were like a hyper masculine culture back then, and they only sent men to battle. They lost so many men in that battle that they had to arm the women had to step up and become so when Jake and his crew got to fight, they're only fighting Arez women who are out there. Wow. And the Arez women are strong soldiers.
Yeah.
Before that, they weren't allowed to fight, but once they started to fight, in space and everything, they they're really formidable fighters.
Man,
And
that's
Rez already, they're already like 10 times stronger than the average human. And like, so an Rez woman can throw a man through a wall.
Nice. That's actually pretty awesome though.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and it's cool that you've kind of like shown how their cultural has kind of given almost like more equality to the women, so to speak.
Yeah.
Did you plan that? Like,
yeah, the captain of that ship, he was General Bach. He became the first Emperor Bach the First.
mm-hmm.
He actually, in order to take the throne, he gave women equal rights on the planet.
That's awesome. I like that a lot. So in choosing his name, did you have a hard time picking a name for him?
Oh, Jake. It kind of just came to me.
Mm-hmm.
At first I was going to call him Jake Takeshi.
Mm-hmm.
But a friend of mine is like, that's too close to Tekashi 6ix9ine. You don't want your character to be associated with that. You're like, you know what? You're right, Takeda. It is.
It's a good name. Like, it's a fascinating and interesting name. So
yeah,
and it definitely pulls into the genre.
Yeah, and he's biracial, like Black and Asian.
Sweet
character. I always picture. I'm doing like an audio video project right now on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And I using like Midjourney to do a lot of the images. And like his dad, I always pictured his dad looking like Randall Park. So,
nice.
And his personality's kind of quirky like Randall Park also.
Yeah. So did you plan like him to be kind of like that when you were forming him like in book 1?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So what was your least favorite thing about his character?
Least favorite?
Yeah.
I don't know. I like it all. I like damaged characters.
Yes. I love them too because they're fun to talk about and there's so much into them. Did you find anything that you struggled with like fleshing out with him when he comes into certain situations or anything?
No, it's like when you start like building a character, because when you're writing, sometimes because the book is the series is 9 books, but originally it's only supposed to be 3. So as I started building the character, the way he would interact in different situations the way he would behave in certain situations, it kind of just made sense for his character. Like you kind of go into a new scenario with with that character standing behind you, whispering to you how they would act in that situation.
Yeah. Nice. So, and you said it was supposed to be a 3-book series and it's 9?
Yeah. Cause what happened was as I was writing book 1, because Jake was supposed to be the only main character.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was writing the Red Girl, Adiola turned out to be such an interesting character, and she has such powerful moments in that book that by the time I got to book 3, I was like, let's take a trip to her planet and see what she's doing. And then we have book 1 and 2. Book 1, they're together. Book 2 is a Jake story. Book 3 is Adiola, back to Jake for book 4, back to Adiola for 5.
Ooh.
And yeah, the story goes back and forth between their 2 characters.
That's awesome how you did that because it's just strictly focused on one character and then kind of tying it in with the next book. Super awesome.
Yeah.
So that just kind of developed as you finished like book 1 then?
Yeah, because I always knew how I wanted the series to end.
Mm-hmm.
But as I'm writing, I don't go in a straight line when I write. I write most times I'll write the first chapter and the last chapter. And then I'll jump around to whatever chapter pops in my head while I'm out working or while I'm out doing something. And and that's been and it's funny because whatever chapter is left over is the hardest one to write because that's the one I'm forced to sit down and write. And it kind of just went that way. And new characters are introduced and others die off. And then you'll write a character for a situation in one book that'll that'll expand out to a point where when you get to a later book and like, how would I write this book if I didn't make that character before?
Yeah.
So yeah, Adiola, she has her own storyline, her own cast of characters on her world that she interacts with, while Jake has his storyline with all his friends and enemies that he interacts with.
So
And what was I about to say? And each book is pretty much self-contained with threads that lead on into the next part.
I like it. That is awesome. So the final thing I want to touch on before we end, because you mentioned he goes through a lot of mental health stuff. Like, how does he deal with his mental health and kind of get where he can function without because I can only imagine having that much trauma, like your parents dying and everything, like your world being basically like blown to smithereens. That causes a lot. Like, does he struggle with PTSD? Like, what kind of stuff does he have going on, and how does he deal with it?
He's not the healthiest guy. Well, what he does is he focuses so much on his mission to find Adiola and his mission during the war. Like, he's so focused on the events that are transpiring around him, and then another humongous event that he has to take care of near the end of the series, that he doesn't focus on himself much. I think he's a kind of personality where he invests himself in others, kind of not to look at himself too hard.
Yeah.
And a lot of times his friends and people close to him have to kind of pull him aside and, just check on him, because he's not going to let them know. He wants to help people around him, but he's not going to check to see how much he's hurting himself.
Man. He's got good friends. We all need those.
Yeah.
Well, Thomas, thank you so much for being on Character Driven. Go ahead and tell our listeners and viewers where they can find you and this amazing character.
Okay. You can find the Versatile Layer series on Amazon.com. Just type in Versatile Layer books. If you just type Versatile Layer, you're going to get a lot of sweatshirts and jackets. You can also find them at versatile-layer.com/books also. And I believe that's it.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for chatting with us and watching tonight. Don't forget to hit that like button, and remember, it's always time to go indie now.
Jacob nervously scanned the area outside the gates of his father's salvage yard. He adjusted his glasses with his index finger. After he verified that the coast was clear, he motioned with his hand for Adiola to follow him. She boldly emerged from the gate. She stumbled and tripped into a parked motorized bike, fashioned after a Vespa, that was near the entrance. Due to the narrow streets and walkways on the station, these compact vehicles were the primary mode of transportation other than public transport. The vintage-styled vehicle fell over with a loud crash. Jake jumped out of his skin. "What are you doing?" he asked in a loud shriek. "I thought you were a trained warrior." Adiola became visibly annoyed. Her eyes narrowed and she said, "The gravity here does not feel right."